Dong-Hyun Kim stood at the head of the mahogany table in his Arlington, Virginia estate, one hand resting on his daughter's shoulder, the other gesturing toward the elegant woman beside him. "Everyone, this is Park Ji-woo, my fiancé." The dinner guests offered polite applause, champagne glasses raised halfway. Dong-Hyun's associates from his import business nodded with calculated smiles. His mother sat rigid at the far end, her disapproval practically radiating across the linen tablecloth. But then 5-year-old Mina wriggled free from her father's grip, her patent leather shoes clicking against the hardwood as she ran. Not toward Ji-woo, but toward the woman seated 3 chairs down. "That's my real mom," Mina announced, throwing her small arms around the neck of Akilah Mensah, a woman whose dark skin and startled expression made her the only guest frozen mid-sip of wine. The room didn't just go quiet, it went cold. Akilah's wine glass trembled in her hand as every eye turned toward her. She'd known coming here was dangerous, maybe stupid, but Dong-Hyun's assistant had insisted this was just a business dinner and her translation services were needed. Nothing about meeting his fiancée. Nothing about his daughter being here. "Mina, sweetie." Dong-Hyun's voice carried that edge Akilah remembered too well, the one that made grown men reconsider their life choices. "Come back here, now." But Mina squeezed tighter, her face buried against Akilah's collarbone. "She smells like the lady who used to sing to me, the one in the pictures grandmother hides." Ji-woo's perfect posture cracked just slightly. Her manicured fingers curled around her champagne flute. "Dong-Hyun, who is this woman?" Akilah stood slowly, trying to untangle Mina's grip without causing more of a scene. "I should go. This is clearly... I didn't know." "Sit down." Dong-Hyun's mother, Mrs. Kim, spoke for the first time that evening, her accented English sharp as a blade. "You come into my son's home. You don't run like coward." Probably the worst possible response, but Akilah sank back into her chair anyway. Mina climbed into her lap like she'd done it 1,000 times before, and maybe in some half-remembered dream world, she had. "Appa," Mina tugged her father's sleeve when he approached. "Why did you say she went away? She's right here." Dong-Hyun looked like he'd swallowed glass. His jaw worked, but no words came out. It was Ji-woo who recovered first, setting down her glass with deliberate care. "Perhaps someone should explain, before I decide whether to stay for dessert." The threat hung there, subtle but unmistakable. Akilah felt Mina's heartbeat against her chest. Too fast, too fragile. She'd spent 3 years trying to forget this man, this life, the way everything had imploded. And now his daughter, the child she'd helped raise for 2 years before everything fell apart, was clinging to her like she was drowning. Mina was very young. Dong-Hyun started, his composure sliding back into place like armor. "She doesn't remember clearly." "I do remember," Mina insisted, her voice wobbling. "You said she had to leave because... Her small face scrunched up, trying to recall. "Because of the bad things. But you said she wanted to leave. You said she didn't love us anymore." Akilah's breath caught. No, not caught. More like someone had reached into her chest and squeezed. She'd never wanted to leave. She'd been forced out, threatened, paid off by the woman now glaring at her from the end of the table. Mrs. Kim's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Maybe fear. "This is absurd," Ji-woo said, standing abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor. "I didn't agree to marry into a melodrama." "Ji-woo, wait." Dong-Hyun reached for her, but she was already moving toward the foyer, her heels sharp and angry against the floor. Dong-Hyun shot Akilah a look. Part fury, part something she couldn't name, before following his fiancée out. The remaining guests exchanged glances. Someone coughed. Mrs. Kim stood slowly, her silk hanbok rustling. Everyone leave. Dinner is finished. They scattered like startled birds, grabbing coats and briefcases, murmuring apologies and excuses. Within minutes, only 4 people remained: Mrs. Kim, Akilah, Mina, and the wreckage of what should have been a simple business transaction. You, Mrs. Kim pointed at Akilah. Come to study. We talk. Mina's grip tightened. Don't let grandmother take you again. Again. The word landed like a punch. Baby, I need to talk to your grandmother, Akilah whispered, smoothing Mina's hair. But I'm not going anywhere, okay? Not without saying goodbye first. A promise she had no business making, but the words came out anyway. Mina nodded slowly, then ran toward the stairs, probably to her room where she could pretend none of this was happening. Akilah followed Mrs. Kim into the study, a room that smelled like leather and expensive whiskey. The older woman didn't sit. Didn't offer Akilah a chair either. You were paid, Mrs. Kim said flatly. $100,000. To leave. To forget. I was threatened, Akilah corrected, her voice steadier than she felt. You said if I didn't take the money and disappear, you'd make sure I was deported, that I'd never work in translation again, that I'd... You are not Korean. You do not understand our ways. I understood that you hated me. Mrs. Kim's face remained impassive. I protected my family. My son was obsessed with you, blind to duty, to tradition. He would have thrown everything away. So you made him think I abandoned him? That I didn't love Mina? What I did for my granddaughter. She needed stability, not a woman who what? Loved her? Took care of her while Dong-Hyun was building his empire? Mrs. Kim's expression cracked, just for a second. You think I do not know what my son does? The people he hurts? You were collateral damage. But you took the money. You left. Akilah's hands curled into fists. Because you gave me no choice. You told me Dong-Hyun agreed with you, that he wanted me gone. Silence. He didn't know, Akilah said slowly, realization dawning cold and terrible. He still doesn't know you paid me off. Mrs. Kim's jaw tightened. What he knows is you disappeared. What he believes is you chose yourself over his daughter. That is enough. You're going to tell him the truth. No. Mrs. Kim turned toward the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. And neither will you. Because if you do, if you disrupt this wedding, if you take Ji-woo away from him, I will make sure you never see Mina again. Legal ways. Permanent ways. Akilah felt something inside her shift. Not break, but calcify. Harden. You can't keep threatening me forever. I do not threaten, I promise. Mrs. Kim finally looked at her, and for the first time Akilah saw something almost like regret there. Go home, Miss Mensah. Forget this happened. You are translator, nothing more. My son will explain to his daughter that her memory is confused. Children forget. They move on. And if I don't leave, then you will learn that in this country, money and connections matter more than truth. Mrs. Kim walked to the door, opened it. Car is waiting. Take it. Go. Akilah wanted to argue, to fight, to march upstairs and tell Mina everything. But she'd learned 3 years ago that fighting Mrs. Kim head-on was like punching concrete. You'd only hurt yourself. She walked out of the study, past the dining room with its half-eaten meal, toward the front door, and nearly collided with Dong-Hyun coming back inside. He looked wrecked. Hair disheveled, tie loosened, eyes red-rimmed. Ji-woo left, he said flatly. Called off the engagement. Said she won't marry a man who keeps secrets. I'm sorry, Akilah managed, even though sorry felt inadequate for everything crashing down around them. Are you? He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne. That same cedar and smoke combination that used to cling to her clothes, her hair, her skin. Sorry you showed up tonight? Sorry my daughter recognized you? Or sorry you walked away 3 years ago without a damn word? Akilah's throat tightened. Your mother? My mother told me you took money and ran. That you said Mina wasn't your responsibility. That you were done playing house. And you believed her. I had no reason not to. His voice cracked. You were gone. Your apartment cleared out. Your phone disconnected. What was I supposed to think? That you'd fight for me, she thought. That you'd question it. That you'd... But she couldn't say that. Not with Mrs. Kim probably listening from the study. Not when one wrong word could mean never seeing Mina again. I should go, Akilah said instead, hating how weak it sounded. Yeah, you should. Dong-Hyun moved past her, his shoulder brushing hers, and the on contact sent electricity down her spine. 3 years, and her body still remembered his. The car will take you wherever you need to go. He was halfway up the stairs when Mina appeared on the landing, rubbing her eyes. Appa, is she leaving again? Dong-Hyun's back went rigid. He didn't turn around. Yes, baby. Miss Akilah was just visiting. But she's my mom. No, Mina. Your mother. Your mother isn't here anymore. The words hung in the air, brutal and final. Akilah wanted to scream that she was here, that she'd always been here, waiting, hoping, trying to figure out how to come back. But Mrs. Kim's threats echoed in her skull. So she did what she'd done 3 years ago. She left. The car ride back to her cramped apartment in DuPont Circle was 40 minutes of silent torture. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just dropped her off and disappeared into the night. Inside, Akilah's roommate, Chikondi from Malawi, looked up from her nursing textbooks. Girl, you look like you saw a ghost. Worse, Akilah dropped onto their second-hand couch. I saw my past, and it recognized me. She told Chikondi everything. The dinner, Mina, the threats, Dong-Hyun's devastated face. By the end, Chikondi was pacing their tiny living room, waving her highlighter like a weapon. So let me get this straight, Chikondi said. Evil grandmother pays you to disappear. You disappear. Ex-boyfriend thinks you abandoned his kid. And now she's threatening you again to stay away. That's the summary, yeah. And what are you going to do? Akilah stared at the ceiling, at the water stain shaped like Africa, at the life she'd built from scraps and survival. I don't know. Liar. You know exactly what you're going to do. Chikondi sat beside her. You're going to fight. Because that little girl deserves to know the truth, and that man deserves to know he was manipulated. Mrs. Kim will destroy me. She'll try, but maybe, probably, you're stronger than you were 3 years ago. Maybe, probably, but still terrified. Akilah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her swipe. Miss Mensah, a woman's voice, smooth and cold. This is Park Ji-woo. I believe we should talk. The coffee shop Ji-woo chose was in Georgetown. All exposed brick and expensive espresso machines. Akilah arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a vanilla latte she couldn't really afford, and claimed a corner table where she could see the door. Ji-woo walked in exactly on time, wearing a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than Akilah's rent. She ordered nothing, just sat down across from Akilah with her designer purse balanced on her knees. Thank you for meeting me, Ji-woo said, her English flawless and precise. I imagine you're wondering why I called. The thought crossed my mind, yeah. Ji-woo's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I am not a stupid woman, Miss Mensah. When a man's 5-year-old daughter calls another woman mom at a dinner party, there is a story, and I prefer to know the full story before I make permanent decisions. I thought you called off the engagement. I said I called it off. I did not say the decision was final. Ji-woo tilted her head. Tell me what happened 3 years ago. The truth, not whatever sanitized version the Kim family is spreading. Akilah hesitated. This could be a trap. Probably was a trap. But Ji-woo's eyes held something sharp and genuine. Curiosity, maybe. Or calculation. So Akilah talked. About meeting Dong-Hyun 5 years ago when his organization needed a translator for their Somali shipping contacts. About how friendship had turned into something more. Something terrifying and beautiful. About moving in with him. About falling in love with Mina. About planning a future. And then Mrs. Kim made her move, Akilah said quietly. She called me to a meeting. Told me I was a liability. That Dong-Hyun needed to marry someone Korean, someone from a respected family, someone who understood the business and wouldn't ask questions. Someone like me, Ji-woo murmured. She offered me money, a lot of money. And when I refused, she showed me photographs of my sister back in South Sudan, my nieces and nephews. She knew where they lived, where they went to school. Akilah's hands tightened around her coffee cup. She said if I didn't leave quietly, accidents could happen. Fires, robberies. Things that look random but aren't. Ji-woo's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. So you took the money. I took the money and I ran. Because I was scared, and I was alone, and Akilah's voice broke. I believed her when she said Dong-Hyun wanted me gone, that he'd agreed to the arrangement, that he was relieved to have an excuse to end things. But he wasn't. No, he thought I abandoned him. Abandoned Mina. Ji-woo leaned back, drumming her perfectly manicured nails against the table. Mrs. Kim is a formidable woman. I knew this when Dong-Hyun and I were introduced by a mutual associate. Our engagement was supposed to be strategic, beneficial for both families. You don't love him? I respect him. I admire his efficiency. Love is a luxury people in our position rarely afford. Ji-woo's gaze sharpened. But you do love him, still, even after 3 years. It wasn't a question. Akilah didn't answer, which was answer enough. Ji-woo stood abruptly. I am going to give you some advice, Miss Mensah. Free advice which I rarely offer. If you want Dong-Hyun back, if you want Mina to know the truth, you cannot fight Mrs. Kim directly. She has too much power, too many connections. But she has a weakness. What weakness? Her son, her granddaughter, her family. Ji-woo adjusted her purse. Make Dong-Hyun question everything his mother told him. Make him investigate. Make him angry enough to dig for truth. Because once he knows he was manipulated, once he understands what his mother did, that family loyalty will crack, maybe shatter completely. Why are you telling me this? If I succeed, you lose your engagement. Ji-woo smiled, and this time it was genuine, if a little sad. I lose a strategic marriage to a man who will always love someone else. Not exactly a tragedy, Miss Mensah. Besides, she paused at the door. No woman should have her life threatened over love. That is what villains do. And I prefer not to align myself with villains. She left, heels clicking against the hardwood, leaving Akilah with cold coffee and a dangerous idea taking root. That night, Akilah made a list. Everything she could remember from her time with Dong-Hyun. Bank statements, text messages, photographs. Most of it was gone, wiped clean when she'd fled. But there had to be something. Some thread she could pull. And then she remembered. The storage unit. 3 years ago, in her panic, she'd thrown everything she couldn't carry into a storage unit in Alexandria. She'd meant to empty it, to sort through the wreckage of her old life. But she'd never found the courage. The monthly fees kept auto-drafting from her account, a ghost expense she'd learned to ignore. The next morning, she took the metro to Alexandria, her heart pounding against her ribs. The storage facility was exactly as depressing as she remembered. Concrete and fluorescent lights and the smell of dust. Unit 247. She punched in the code, praying it still worked. The door rolled up with a metallic shriek, revealing boxes and bags and memories she'd tried to forget. Akilah stepped inside, pulled the light cord, and started searching. It took 2 hours, but she found it. A shoebox full of letters, receipts, and a flash drive labeled backup. Her hands shook as she pocketed the flash drive. She didn't know what was on it. Probably photos, maybe emails she'd saved. But it was something. Evidence. Proof that she'd existed in Dong-Hyun's life, that she'd mattered. She was locking the unit when her phone rang. Dong-Hyun's name flashed on the screen. For 5 seconds she considered not answering, but curiosity won out. "Hello? We need to talk." His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. "Not over the phone. Can you meet me?" "Where?" "You remember the place." She did. The Korean barbecue restaurant in Annandale, where they'd had their first real date, where he'd taught her how to use chopsticks properly, and she'd made him try injera for the first time. "When?" she asked. "Now. If you can." She could. She absolutely could. Akilah arrived at Seocho Grill 40 minutes later, stomach churning. Dong-Hyun was already there, sitting in their old booth in the back corner, a pot of tea steaming between 2 cups. He looked terrible. Dark circles, rumpled shirt, hair that hadn't seen a comb in hours. "You came," he said, sounding almost surprised. "You called." Akilah slid into the booth, keeping her coat on like armor. "What's this about?" "Mina won't stop crying. She keeps asking for you, asking why you left her." He poured tea with unsteady hands. "My mother says she'll forget. That kid's resilient. But I can't stop thinking about what Mina said. About the pictures grandmother hides." Akilah's pulse quickened. "What pictures?" "I don't know. But last night I went through my mother's things. Found a locked drawer in her office." He pulled out his phone, swiped to a photo, and turned it toward Akilah. The image showed a stack of photographs. Akilah and Mina at the park, Akilah braiding Mina's hair, Akilah and Dong-Hyun laughing over dinner. All of them hidden away like contraband. "My mother told me you wanted nothing to do with us," Dong-Hyun said slowly. "That you were relieved to leave. But these don't look like the photos of someone who wanted to disappear." "They're not. So tell me what really happened. No more running, no more silence. Just truth." This was it. The opening Jiwoo had talked about. The crack in the armor. Akilah took a breath and told him everything. The threats, the money, the fear. Mrs. Kim's promises to hurt her family. The lies she'd been told about Dong-Hyun agreeing to the arrangement. By the end, Dong-Hyun's hands were clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. "She threatened your family," he repeated, his voice deadly quiet. "My mother threatened to hurt your family if you didn't leave." "Yes. And you believed her. I know her, Dong-Hyun. I know what your organization is capable of. I'd seen enough to understand she wasn't bluffing." He stood abruptly, pacing the narrow space beside the booth. "I'm going to kill her. I'm actually going to—" "No, but I want to—" "Dong-Hyun. She took 3 years from us. From Mina. She let my daughter think you abandoned her." He stopped, facing Akilah with eyes that burned. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call, write, something?" "Because she showed me bank transfers, emails, evidence that you'd authorized the payment, that you'd signed off on me leaving. And I was heartbroken. I was stupid. I believed her. You should have trusted me. And you should have questioned why I disappeared so completely." The words hung between them, both true and painful. Dong-Hyun sat back down, scrubbing his face with his hands. "So what now? My engagement is off. My mother is a manipulative liar. My daughter is traumatized. And you? You're back. After 3 years. What am I supposed to do with that?" "I don't know," Akilah admitted. "But I have something. Evidence, maybe. I need to look at it first, but what kind of evidence?" She told him about the flash drive, about the storage unit, about the possibility that somewhere in those digital files was proof of Mrs. Kim's manipulation. "Let me see it," Dong-Hyun said immediately. "Tonight, come to the house. We'll go through it together. Your mother is not welcome in my home anymore. I kicked her out this morning." His smile was sharp and bitter. "Told her to stay at her condo until I decided whether to forgive her, which I won't. But she doesn't know that yet." Akilah wanted to believe this was real, that they could actually fight back. But years of running had made her cautious. "What about Mina?" "Mina is with my sister for the week. Probably better that way while I sort things out." He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers but not quite touching. "Come tonight, please. Let's figure this out together." It was a terrible idea, probably dangerous, definitely emotional suicide. But Akilah nodded anyway. "Okay, tonight." Akilah stood outside Dong-Hyun's estate at 8 p.m., the flash drive heavy in her coat pocket. The house looked different without cars lining the driveway, without people filling the rooms. Quieter. Sadder, maybe. Dong-Hyun answered the door himself, wearing jeans and a black sweater instead of his usual suits. "You came." "I said I would." He stepped aside to let her in. The dining room where everything had exploded was dark now. Chairs pushed in, tablecloth removed. Like erasing evidence of a crime. "I set up my laptop in the study," Dong-Hyun said, leading her down the familiar hallway. "Figured we'd need a bigger screen than my phone." The study looked the same as yesterday. Same leather, same whiskey smell, same tension. But this time they were on the same side. Akilah handed him the flash drive. Their fingers brushed, and she felt that familiar electricity, that muscle memory of touch. Dong-Hyun felt it too. She could tell by the way his breath changed, just slightly. But he turned away, plugging the drive into his computer. "There's a lot here," he said after a moment, scrolling through folders. Photos, emails, some voice memos. "I was paranoid back then. Saved everything." "Good." He clicked on a folder labeled Family. Photos loaded onto the screen. Akilah holding newborn Mina. Dong-Hyun teaching her to ride a bike. The 3 of them at Christmas, Halloween, random Tuesday afternoons. Dong-Hyun's jaw worked. "I forgot. I'd forgotten how much you were there, how much you were part of everything." "I tried to forget too," Akilah said softly. "Didn't work." He opened another folder. Correspondence. Emails between Akilah and Dong-Hyun, between Akilah and his assistant, between and there. An email chain with Mrs. Kim. Dong-Hyun read silently, his expression darkening with each line. The emails started polite. Mrs. Kim inviting Akilah to lunch, asking about her family, offering advice. Then they turned sharper. Questions about Akilah's intentions. Comments about cultural compatibility. And finally, the ultimatum. "Meet me Monday. Come alone. We will discuss your future with my son." The email was dated 2 weeks before Akilah disappeared. "This is it," Dong-Hyun said, his voice tight. "This is when she cornered you." "Yeah." He kept scrolling. Found another folder. Bank records. Akilah had photographed the transfer confirmation Mrs. Kim had shown her. $100,000 from a shell account to Akilah's checking account, with a memo line that read, "Severance agreement." She made it look like I authorized this. Dong-Hyun said, staring at the screen. But I wouldn't have. I know that now. Why didn't you fight harder? The question came out raw. Why didn't you demand to talk to me before you ran? Akilah sank into the leather chair opposite his desk. Because I was 27 years old and terrified. Because I'd watched your organization make people disappear for less than crossing your mother. Because she showed me evidence, Dong-Hyun. Convincing evidence. And when you love someone, sometimes you believe the worst about yourself. That maybe you aren't good enough. That maybe they do want you gone. He trailed off, probably because he couldn't argue. Fear made people irrational. Love made people stupid. Both together? Disaster. They spent the next hour combing through files. Found more evidence. Phone records showing Akilah had tried to call Dong-Hyun 17 times the day she left. All blocked. Security footage from their old apartment building showing Mrs. Kim visiting the day before Akilah disappeared. She was thorough, Dong-Hyun said grimly. Covered every angle. She's had decades of practice. He sat back, rubbing his temples. I need a drink. You want something? Whatever you're having. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one, and sat beside her instead of behind the desk. Close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell that cedar and smoke combination that still made her dizzy. I was so angry at you, Dong-Hyun said after a long silence. For months, maybe years. I couldn't understand how you could just leave. How you could walk away from Mina without even saying goodbye. I'm sorry, Akilah whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't fight harder. That I didn't... Stop. He turned to face her, his eyes intense. You were protecting your family. You did what you had to do. My mother is the one who should apologize. But she won't. That's not who she is. So what now? Now I confront her with this evidence. Force her to admit what she did. And then, he paused. I don't know. Exile her from my life? From Mina's life? It sounds dramatic, but she destroyed 3 years. She hurt my daughter. She hurt you. And if she won't admit it, then I'll make her life as difficult as she made yours. His smile was cold. I've learned a few things from her over the years. About pressure. About consequences. They sat in silence, drinking whiskey, the weight of everything pressing down. Finally, Akilah spoke. What about us? Dong-Hyun looked at her, really looked, for the first time since she'd arrived. What about us? I don't know if there's still an us to salvage. 3 years is a long time. You've changed. I've changed. Maybe, probably, we're different people now. Are you? He shifted closer, his knee brushing hers. Different? In some ways, I'm more careful now. Less trusting. That's not different. That's just wounded. The observation hit harder than it should have. Akilah finished her whiskey, set the glass down with a sharp click. I should go. It's late and we both need to think about... Stay. Dong-Hyun caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Not like before. Just stay. Talk to me. I've missed talking to you. About what? Anything. Everything. What you've been doing for 3 years. Where you've been living. If you're happy. I'm not happy, Akilah admitted. I'm surviving. There's a difference. Yeah, there is. So she stayed. They talked until midnight, then past it, swapping stories like old friends instead of former lovers. Akilah told him about her cramped apartment, her roommate Chikondi, her translation work for immigration lawyers. Dong-Hyun told her about Mina's school struggles, his sister's wedding, the nightmares he'd had for months after Akilah left. I thought maybe you died, he confessed, that someone from a rival organization had taken you. I tore apart Virginia looking for leads, for anything. And then my mother showed me the bank transfer, the goodbye note you'd supposedly left. Wait, what note? The one you wrote, saying you couldn't do this anymore, that Mina deserved better, that I deserved someone who understood my world. Akilah's stomach dropped. I never wrote a note. Dong-Hyun went very still. You never... I left without saying goodbye because your mother told me if I contacted you directly, people would get hurt. I was supposed to just vanish. There was no note. They stared at each other, the implications sinking in. She forged it, Akilah said slowly. She must have. To make sure you didn't come after me. Dong-Hyun stood abruptly, pacing again. I'm going to her condo. Right now, I'm going to... Stop. Akilah grabbed his arm. You're angry. You're not thinking clearly. If you go there now, you'll do something you regret. I want to do something I'll regret. But Mina needs you stable. She needs her father, not someone in prison for assault. That got through. Dong-Hyun stopped, taking several deep breaths. You're right. You're... okay. Tomorrow. I'll confront her tomorrow with the evidence, with a clear head. We'll confront her together, Akilah corrected. I deserve to see her face when she realizes we know. She'll try to turn it around, make herself the victim. Let her try. They stood there, close enough that Akilah could count his heartbeats, feel his breath on her forehead. Dong-Hyun's hand came up slowly, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. The gesture was so familiar it hurt. I never stopped loving you, he said quietly. Even when I hated you, I loved you. Does that make sense? Unfortunately, yes. If we do this, if we try again, it won't be easy. My life is complicated, dangerous sometimes, and my mother will fight us every step. I know. And you still want to try. Akilah thought about the last 3 years. The loneliness, the regret, the way she'd built a small half-life instead of a real one. Thought about Mina's face when she'd recognized her. Thought about Dong-Hyun's laugh, his terrible cooking, the way he'd read her poetry in Korean even though she didn't understand most of it. Yeah, she said. I still want to try. He kissed her forehead then, soft and reverent. Not passionate, but tender. A promise instead of a demand. Stay tonight in the guest room. Tomorrow's going to be brutal and I don't want to be alone. Neither do I. The guest room was down the hall from where they'd once shared a bedroom. Akilah lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was making another terrible mistake. If loving Dong-Hyun Kim was just a different kind of survival instinct, doomed and desperate. But when dawn broke gray and cold through the window, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Mrs. Kim's condo was in McLean, all glass and steel and expensive furniture that looked uncomfortable. She opened the door wearing a silk robe, her expression shifting from surprise to fury when she saw both Dong-Hyun and Akilah standing there. What is this? She demanded in Korean. English, mother, Dong-Hyun said coldly. I want Miss Mensah to understand everything. Mrs. Kim's jaw tightened, but she stepped aside. Come in, though I do not appreciate ambush in my home. The living room was pristine, like a showroom. Mrs. Kim sat in a high-backed chair that might as well have been a throne, gesturing for them to sit on the couch across from her. Neither of them sat. We found evidence, Dong-Hyun started, pulling out his tablet. Emails, bank records, phone logs, all proving you paid Akilah to leave. That you threatened her family. That you forged a goodbye note in her handwriting. Mrs. Kim's expression didn't change. So, the casual admission knocked the wind out of Akilah's lungs. No denial, no excuse. Just, so? So you lied, Dong-Hyun's voice rose. You manipulated both of us. You stole 3 years. I protected my family, Mrs. Kim interrupted. You were going to marry this woman. You were going to make her Mina's stepmother officially. And then what? When your enemies found out your weakness? When rival organizations decided to hurt you through her? That was my decision to make. No, it was mine. Mrs. Kim stood, her small frame somehow commanding. I am your mother. I built this organization with your father. I know what it takes to survive in this world, and it does not include attachments to people who make you soft. Akilah didn't make me soft. She made me human. Human gets you killed in our business. Akilah finally spoke up, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You threatened my sister, my nieces and nephews. You made me believe Dong-Hyun wanted me gone. You let Mina think I abandoned her. That's not protection. That's cruelty. Mrs. Kim turned her cold gaze on Akilah. You think I enjoyed it? You think I liked seeing my son miserable? But I did what was necessary, and I would do it again. Then you leave me no choice, Dong-Hyun said quietly. I'm cutting you out. From my business, from Mina's life, from everything. You're not welcome at the house. You won't see your granddaughter. And if you ever threaten Akilah or her family again, I will make sure every contact, every ally, every person who respects the Kim name knows exactly what you did. Mrs. Kim's composure cracked just slightly. You would destroy your own mother over this woman? I would destroy anyone who hurts my family. And Akilah is my family. She was always my family. You're the one who refused to see it. Silence stretched, taut and terrible. Mrs. Kim's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. You will regret this. The only thing I regret is not questioning you 3 years ago. Dong-Hyun took Akilah's hand, lacing their fingers together. We're leaving. Don't contact me. Don't contact Akilah. If you want any chance of reconciliation, you'll wait until I'm ready, which might be never. They walked out, leaving Mrs. Kim standing alone in her perfect, empty condo. In the car, Akilah's hands wouldn't stop shaking. That was brutal? Yeah. Dong-Hyun pulled into traffic, his jaw tight. But necessary. She needed to understand there are consequences. What if she retaliates? She won't, not directly. My mother is many things, but she's not stupid. She knows I have enough evidence to destroy her reputation in certain circles. She'll lay low, probably stew for a while, maybe try guilt trips through my sister. And if that doesn't work, then we deal with it together. They drove in silence for a while, the Virginia suburbs blurring past. Finally, Dong-Hyun spoke again. I need to tell Mina the truth, about why you left, about grandmother's lies. She deserves to know. She's 5 years old, Dong-Hyun. How do you explain manipulation and threats to a 5-year-old? Carefully, with help. He glanced at her. Will you be there when I tell her? If you want me there. I do. We'll both need you. That afternoon they picked up Mina from Dong-Hyun's sister's house. The little girl launched herself at Akilah the moment she saw her, nearly knocking her over. You came back, Mina said, her voice muffled against Akilah's shoulder. Appa said you might come back. I came back, Akilah confirmed, smoothing Mina's hair. And I'm not leaving again. I promise. Later, in Mina's bedroom, surrounded by stuffed animals and Disney posters, Dong-Hyun explained as gently as possible. He told Mina that grandmother had made mistakes, that she'd scared Akilah away because she thought it was the right thing to do, that everyone was very sorry and they were going to fix it. Mina listened, her small face serious. When Dong-Hyun finished, she looked at Akilah. Did grandmother hurt you? She scared me, Akilah said honestly. But I'm okay now. Good, because if she hurt you, I would be very mad at her. Mina's expression turned stubborn. She shouldn't scare people I love. Love. The word hung in the air, simple and profound. You love me? Akilah asked softly. Of course. You're my mom. Mina said it like it was obvious, like the past 3 years hadn't happened. You sang me songs. You made funny pancakes. You helped me not be scared of thunder. Akilah's vision blurred. She blinked rapidly, trying not to cry in front of a 5-year-old. But Dong-Hyun wasn't having it. He wrapped his arms around both of them, creating a small cocoon of warmth and safety. "We're going to be okay," he murmured. "All of us, I promise." The next few weeks were chaos. Jiwoo reached out to officially end the engagement, but she did it gracefully, even sending a gift for Mina. A stuffed tiger with a note that read, "Be fierce, little one." Mrs. Kim stayed away, though Dong-Hyun's sister reported she was very upset and not handling this well. Akilah moved her things out of the DuPont Circle apartment gradually, though Chikondi made her promise they'd still get dinner twice a month. "You're getting your fairy tale ending," Chikondi said, hugging her goodbye. "Don't forget about us regular people." "It's not a fairy tale," Akilah protested. "It's messy and complicated and you're glowing. So yeah, fairy tale." Chikondi grinned. "Now go. Your handsome Mafia boss is waiting." Moving back into Dong-Hyun's house felt strange at first, like stepping into a memory that had been altered. But Mina helped by dragging Akilah around, showing her all the new things. Her latest school projects, her pet goldfish named Bubble, the treehouse Dong-Hyun had built last summer. "I asked Appa to build it when you were gone," Mina admitted. "Because I remembered you said you always wanted a treehouse when you were little." Akilah's throat tightened. "You remembered that. I remember everything about you." At night, after Mina was asleep, Akilah and Dong-Hyun would sit on the back porch, talking through everything that needed to be addressed. His business dealings, her work schedule, how to blend their lives without losing themselves. "I don't want you to give up your translation work," Dong-Hyun said one evening, his hand warm in hers. "I know my mother tried to control every aspect of my life, but I won't do that. Your career matters. And I don't want you to think I'm going to change you," Akilah replied. "I knew who you were when I fell in love with you. I knew the business, the danger. I'm choosing this anyway." "Why?" He turned to face her, genuine curiosity in his eyes. "You could have any life. Why choose this one?" "Because I choose you. The business is part of you, but it's not all of you. You're also the man who reads bedtime stories in 3 languages, who cries at sad movies but pretends he's not, who makes terrible jokes and burns toast and loves his daughter more than anything." She squeezed his hand. "That's who I'm choosing." He kissed her then, properly this time. Not passionate or demanding, but deep and real. A kiss that tasted like promises and second chances. When they pulled apart, both were breathing a little harder. "I want to marry you," Dong-Hyun said abruptly. "Not now, not rushed, but eventually. I want Mina to be our daughter officially. I want you to have my name if you'll take it." "That's... wow." "Okay." Akilah laughed, the sound shaky. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need. I've waited 3 years. I can wait longer." But Akilah didn't need longer. She knew, bone deep and certain, that this was her future. Messy, complicated, but hers. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Dong-Hyun took Akilah and Mina to Great Falls Park. They hiked the trails, had a picnic by the overlook, and when Mina was distracted by a particularly interesting rock formation, Dong-Hyun pulled out a small velvet box. "I know I said I'd wait," he started, his usual confidence wavering. "But I also know what I want, and I want this. Us. Forever." The ring was simple. A sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, nothing ostentatious. Perfect. "Yes," Akilah said, not even pretending to think about it. "Obviously yes." Mina shrieked when she saw the ring, jumping up and down. "Does this mean you're really my mom now?" "I was always your mom," Akilah corrected, pulling her into a hug. But now it's going to be official. They told family and friends slowly. Dong-Hyun's sister cried happy tears. Chikondi demanded to be maid of honor. Even some of Dong-Hyun's associates sent congratulations, though the messages were carefully worded and vaguely threatening about protecting what was theirs. Mrs. Kim didn't respond to the invitation they sent. Didn't call. Didn't acknowledge the engagement at all. "She'll come around," Dong-Hyun's sister insisted. "She's stubborn, but she's not heartless." "She threatened my family," Akilah reminded her. "Heartless is exactly what she is." Hurt people, the sister said gently. "Mother lost father young. Built this empire alone. She's scared of losing Dong-Hyun the same way. So she tried to control who he loved. I didn't say it was rational. But maybe, probably, there was something to that. Fear made people do terrible things. Love made people do brave things. The trick was figuring out which emotion to follow. The wedding was small, held in the estate's garden with only close friends and family. Mina served as flower girl, taking her job very seriously. Akilah wore a dress that blended South Sudanese and Korean elements, a hanbok-inspired top with traditional Dinka beading. Dong-Hyun couldn't stop staring. "You're beautiful," he whispered when she reached the makeshift altar. "You're not so bad yourself." The officiant kept it short and sweet. When it came time for vows, Dong-Hyun spoke first. 3 years ago, I lost you. I thought it was forever. But you came back. Or maybe I finally found the truth. Either way, I'm not letting go again. You are my partner, my family, my home. I promise to choose you every day. To fight for us. To never let anyone, not even my mother, come between what we have." Akilah's turn. She'd written and rewritten her vows a dozen times, but now, standing here, she tossed the script. "I ran once because I was scared. I won't run again. You and Mina are my family. This messy, complicated, beautiful life is mine, and I promise to protect it, to protect us, no matter what comes." They exchanged rings, kissed. Mina cheered so loudly several birds flew out of nearby trees. At the reception, Dong-Hyun pulled Akilah close for their first dance. No dramatic music, just a soft acoustic guitar playing a Korean folk song his father used to love. "Any regrets?" he murmured against her hair. "Only that we wasted 3 years. Then let's not waste another minute." They danced until Mina cut in, demanding her turn with both parents. The three of them swayed together, laughing at nothing and everything, and for the first time in years, Akilah felt complete. Later, as guests mingled and ate too much Korean barbecue mixed with South Sudanese dishes, Akilah noticed a figure standing at the edge of the property. Mrs. Kim, dressed in traditional hanbok, watching from a distance. She didn't approach, didn't try to join the celebration, just watched. Dong-Hyun saw her too. His expression hardened, but Akilah touched his arm. "Let her see what she almost destroyed. Let her see what we built anyway. You're more forgiving than I am." "Not forgiving. Just choosing not to let her ruin this day too." Mrs. Kim left before sunset, slipping away like a ghost. Maybe someday there would be reconciliation. Maybe Mina would grow up and decide she wanted a relationship with her grandmother. Maybe Mrs. Kim would realize what she'd lost and actually apologize. Or maybe not. Some wounds didn't heal cleanly. But that night, lying in bed with Dong-Hyun's arm around her waist and Mina asleep in the room down the hall, Akilah decided she didn't care. They'd survived lies, threats, 3 years of separation. They could survive anything. "Hey," Dong-Hyun whispered in the darkness. "Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for finding the truth. We're going to be okay, right?" Akilah turned to face him, pressing a soft kiss to his lips. "We're going to be better than okay. We're going to be exactly what we're supposed to be." And somehow, despite everything, that felt true. So if you made it this far, thanks for sticking around for this wild journey of second chances and stubborn love. Don't forget to hit that like button if you're a sucker for happy endings like I am. And drop a comment telling me whether you think Mrs. Kim deserves forgiveness or not. Subscribe if you want more stories about messy families and the people who survive them anyway.